From the National Weather Service in Raleigh, it's Nick Petro with a severe thunderstorm update briefing for central North Carolina as of 11:30 this Wednesday, the 17th of March, 2021. And the thing that kind of caught everybody's attention this morning was the Storm Prediction Center Day 2 outlook, which I'm featuring here on this title slide, which has a good chunk of central and eastern and southeastern North Carolina in the level 4 out of 5 for severity. The moderate is what it's called. And, a lot of folks, I've probably got asked about a dozen times or more from different folks, when was the last time this happened? And it's interesting because the last time we were in a moderate for day 2, okay, because remember, they issue one for day 1, which is the current day. They issue one for day 2, which is the outlook for tomorrow. And then the day 3 is like 2 days from now. So the last time a day 2 showed us in moderate wasn't back until 2012. So it's been a long, long time since we've been in a day 2 moderate. And then ironically, the next day it was downgraded and then it turned out nothing happened. So that was like one extreme, that was the last time a day 2 outlook was issued. Now, what I prefer to look at is when was the last time a day 1 was moderate, because I think that's a little bit more, perhaps realistic. And that was back on the 19th of April, 2019. So we're talking, basically 2 years ago. So the point is these moderates don't happen very often. They're pretty rare, maybe twice in 10 years, usually, something like that. So, and I will point out that event back in 2019 on April 19th was a fairly prolific severe weather event. It produced a half a dozen or more tornadoes across the state, and dozens and dozens and dozens of reports of straight line wind damage. So anyway, basically, moderate's a big deal here, and that's why we have potential for significant tornadoes, increased potential for damaging winds. But look, it's the weather and things could change. So, certainly, while this has drummed up quite a bit of concern, there always is opportunity for things to change between now and then. And that's what we're working to do here at the National Weather Service, is refine the details and expectations and what we think exactly is going to happen. Now, current conditions going into this, and this is one of the things that our forecasters at the office are looking at now. Look at all this stratus, this low clouds. It's a dreary day out there now. Well, these are the temperatures right now in the 40s, and you have to get down, you have to get down into, basically here's a more or less a warm front, if you will. So this is, the dividing line between this cool, stable air mass and this warm, very buoyant air mass. Okay, so this kind of air mass does not support any sort of severe thunderstorm activity. However, the expectation is that this warm front that I pointed out will lift to the north and basically bring some of these warmer temperatures up into our area during the daytime tomorrow, which is a needed ingredient for severe storms. So that's one of the things we're looking at closely, is will that stable, cool air erode like the models are suggesting? Okay, now I will point out, this low pressure system, with low pressure up here, remember which way does winds blow around low pressure? Wind blows counterclockwise around low pressure. So clearly this warm front will be making progress northeastward, and we will get into some warm, buoyant air that should support severe thunderstorm potential tomorrow. So anyway, but there's a lot of details that still need to be worked out, and I'll share in another slide here in a moment where we think we might be able to refine exactly where the best chance for severe weather is. But in the meantime, let me also point out, let me remove the satellite image here and put on the Storm Prediction Centers. This is day 1 outlook, and you can see the pink is a high risk. That's level 5 out of 5. So if you're from Jackson, Mississippi to Birmingham, Alabama, and places in between, those are the places that are really probably going to make national news headlines with regard to, tornado formation and devastation and damage and tornado damage. And, so anyway, as this system evolves and moves east, the bullseye shows where the worst of the severe weather is going to be today. All right. So anyway, there's a lot of things that need to happen, come in place for us to realize this severe weather potential tomorrow. Should we get that warm air and it does take place, we have a high potential here for damaging winds, tornadoes. You know what? I forgot to move the flash flood arrow over a little bit. I should probably have that as elevated. I'll probably update that before I email out the slides, mainly because anytime there's a heavy downpour with a thunderstorm, there could always be a quick, very, very localized instance of flooding. Nothing that lasts long or is widespread, but just, you can never rule it out with a thunderstorm episode like we're expecting. All right. So getting really down to the details of all this. So this is our radar reflectivity simulation. And obviously these are subject to large errors, so use with caution. They're mainly meant to provide a timing estimate, not so much intensity. There's no way these models can peg exactly where the oranges and reds are going to be a day ahead of time. So don't take this as this is exactly where the storm's going to be at a given time. Just know that this is kind of a rough idea of timing. And it looks like through the morning hours, at least through noon, all of central North Carolina should be fine. It looks like from about noon, we start to see those storms move into the Triad region and the south and western portions of the Piedmont, the far eastern Charlotte areas, Stanley, Anson County by 2 o'clock, and moving across the Triad or by 2 o'clock as well. It looks like that cool, stable air that I was pointing out on the current conditions a few moments ago will persist the longest across the Triad and points north. So while the Triad is technically in the moderate and even in the enhanced risk for severe weather, if I had to think or predict which areas is probably going to have the least chance for severe weather, I think that it's going to be really tough to get a severe storm in the Triad area. Well, actually, I drew that line too generously. I think really from this area north and west, the air is going to stay very, very stable. And really, it might be tough to get a really bad severe storm. Could there be some gusty winds in the Triad? Absolutely. But we really think that the dividing line between where that warm, humid air is going to set up and where the cool, stable air may hold in place is basically going to be somewhere along the US 1 corridor. Okay. No, not I-85 this time. I know I always say 85. I'm going to reference US 1 this time. Okay. So this is roughly where that dividing line, sometimes we refer to it as a wedge boundary, that separates the stable air from the very moist and buoyant air. So I think somewhere 30 miles either side of US 1, I think will have the best potential to see the worst of the severe weather. So, basically in this time frame right here, 4 to 6 p.m., if you're either side, 30 miles either side of US 1, I think right there is where the worst of the severe weather is going to occur. Okay, somewhere between, an hour or two either side of 4 p.m. tomorrow. Okay, so that would include, the Triangle metro regions, down toward, Southern Pines, up towards Henderson and the Northern 985 corridor is all within that zone where I think we're going to have a boundary separating the cool, stable air to the west from the warm, buoyant air to the east, and severe storms love boundaries. So our thinking is that somewhere 30 miles either side of US 1 is the worst of the worst thunderstorms, okay? Sometime in the mid to late afternoon, again, we'll say 3 to 6 p.m., tomorrow. Okay, so once that initial line moves east, it'll weaken as it heads towards the northeast. But it does look like there may be some lingering showers. I think what you see here depicted at 8 p.m. and 12 a.m. tomorrow night, I think most of that's going to be sub-severe. I think the best chance for severe will be with this line that moves through, between 2, 4, and 6 p.m. And then what you see here on 8 p.m. and midnight is actually stuff that grows out of this area. Let me get my highlighter so we can better see this. But what you see here at 8 p.m. is stuff that grows out of this here at 6 p.m. The worst of the severe weather would be associated with this batch here, that first batch. So this secondary batch should be sub-severe as well as this batch right here. Okay, that should all be, it could still have some gusty winds, but generally not as bad as this initial batch that comes through in the mid to late afternoon. Okay, so there's a lot of information there that I just unpacked. And what will these storms be capable of producing? We're talking, damaging straight line winds is probably a given. But there could be 1 or 2, maybe 3 tornadoes embedded within that. I think, I would expect that some of these storms will be rotating. So anyway, especially along that boundary. So definitely, I think that's where our greatest tornado threat will be again 30 miles either side of the US 1 corridor, and then after that, it's just a matter of these other storms will be capable of producing damaging straight line winds, which, by the way, can be in some cases just as strong or as damaging as tornadoes. Okay, so don't take severe thunderstorm warnings lightly. Okay, obviously, everybody seeks shelter with tornado warnings. Don't underestimate the power of severe thunderstorms as well. Okay, just to summarize the timing, we sent this graphic out earlier. I kind of like this, how it's real simple to digest. And I think that blue box between 3 and 6 p.m. right there, I think those will be the areas with the greatest risk for the worst of the severe weather. Okay, and that 3 to 6 p.m. box, the blue box. All right, so wrapping it up, numerous strong to severe storms are expected Thursday, mainly from late morning west, and more like noontime on, so basically from noontime on across the triad, and then through the early evening east, like along the coastal plain, okay, with the worst of it kind of in the middle of that 3 to 6 p.m. time frame, again, either side of US 1. All right, the greatest threat will be south and east of the triad, obviously, as I pointed that out earlier, with highest risks over the eastern sandhills, central and southern coastal plain. Again, mainly, I'm going to tweak this a little bit because this doesn't quite 100% match up with what I just conveyed along US 1, but I'll clean up that wording for the where here before I email this out and email these slides out. But basically, under the where, I could just convey it and say, by saying either side of US 1, really, will be the greatest risk. All right, and then what do I mean by greatest risk? We're talking damaging straight line winds, large hail, few significant tornadoes. They're all possible. And what will that give us? Numerous downed trees. And, when the trees fall, they take the power lines with them. So look for power outages wherever that happens. And then structural damage, it's all possible with severe storms and tornadoes, of course. So now we want to take time. I'm just trying to remind everybody to figure out where you're going to be Thursday afternoon and evening. Then think about wherever it is you're going to be. Think about where you would seek shelter in those places, and then obviously take action stages when those warnings are issued. So anyway, that's when you want to seek shelter. Okay, here's some references for how you can receive severe weather alerts from the National Weather Service, and then finally we'll repeat this webinar 4:30 this afternoon so that I can any updates that come this afternoon, I'll be able to share those at 4:30. Okay, but so we'll keep you updated. I'm going to tweak a few things in this slide set and email this out here shortly, and then we'll do this webinar again at 4:30 for any last minute updates. Of course, we'll be doing our regularly scheduled webinar tomorrow at 11:30, unless we find it would be helpful to move it up in time. We'll see. So right now we're scheduled for 11:30 tomorrow, unless I decide to move it up a little bit earlier. So stay tuned and check your email for that. All right, so that's the latest with this severe weather episode for Central North Carolina.